It started with the loudest boom I've ever heard in my life. Now, this wasn't your average neighborhood noise, not the oops, dropped a frying pan kind of boom. No, this was more like Michael Bay directed my backyard kind of boom. It was a kind of sound that rattled your ribs and made your cat leap 3 feet into the air and never come back. At first, I genuinely thought my neighbor Fred, who, bless his heart, has the coordination of a potato, had crashed his lawnmower into something again. The man once tried to tow his grill with a skateboard, so nothing's off the table with Fred. Anyway, I stumbled to my window, half asleep, clutching my coffee mug like it owed me money. I opened the curtain and nearly dropped the mug right onto my foot. There was a construction crane in my backyard. Not a cute little Bob the Builder type of thing, no. This was a full-on, steel giant yellow beast of machinery. And in front of it, a hole, a pit. No, a crater. It looked like someone had summoned a meteor and it politely knocked on the tomatoes before landing. We're talking full Jurassic Park stuff. If a T-Rex had peeked its head out, I wouldn't have even blinked. Here's the thing you need to understand. I own this land. Every inch of it. I paid for it with my hard-earned money and a ridiculous amount of paperwork. The house, the trees, the backyard, even the rusty bird bath that's been here since 1996. That bird bath is so old it probably has Wi-Fi at this point. So you can imagine my confusion when I looked out and saw my beloved tomato patch replaced with what looked like a DIY dungeon project. Still in my Scooby-Doo slippers and pajama pants covered in breakfast burrito stains, I stormed outside like a man on a mission. The morning breeze hit me, and all I could smell was freshly dug dirt and injustice. I raised my voice, loud enough to startle the squirrels in the neighbor's tree, and yelled, "Hey, what the huck is going on?" One of the construction workers, wearing a bright orange vest and eating a sandwich like nothing weird was happening, turned around and shrugged. "Orders from the HOA," he said casually, as if they were delivering Girl Scout cookies, not digging a hole big enough to trap a woolly mammoth. I blinked. "The what now?" "The Homeowners Association," he said. "Said something about future landscaping beautification. We're just doing what's on the paperwork." Beautification? My yard wasn't exactly Versailles, but it wasn't hideous either. I mowed my grass, I had a couple gnomes, and yeah, okay, I painted my mailbox neon green. But come on, that was a style choice. A bold, eco-friendly, I want to find my house even when I'm half-blind style choice. And now apparently that was enough reason to declare war. I looked again at the pit. It was deep, at least 8 feet, the kind of deep that made you wonder if they were trying to find oil or build an underground lair. I swear I saw a raccoon walk by, stop at the edge, and just shake its head like, "Nope, not today." I shouted again, "You can't just dig on someone's private property." Another shrug. "Talk to the HOA, man." Oh, I was going to. Because when someone digs a surprise pit in your backyard and calls it beautification, you don't just let it go. That's when I realized this wasn't just a mistake. This was a message. They weren't beautifying anything. They were trying to bury me, not literally, I hoped, but reputationally, financially, maybe emotionally too. Well, guess what? They picked the wrong guy to mess with. Because I had a lawn full of gnomes, a neon green mailbox, and absolutely no chill. And this was war. I didn't even change clothes. Still covered in mud from head to toe, carrying my half-broken garden gnome Frank like a wounded soldier, I marched straight into the HOA office like an angry swamp creature on a mission. The office smelled like lavender air freshener and overpriced injustice. And there she was, Miss Tebra, sitting behind her desk like she owned the planet, clad in her signature pastel blazer and pearls, sipping cucumber water like she wasn't personally responsible for turning my backyard into a post-apocalyptic crater. She looked up, smiling like she was about to offer me a cookie. "Oh, hello, Mr. Thompson. You're here about the land realignment?" Land realignment? I blinked, trying to keep my inner Hulk from smashing her ficus plant. Realignment? You dug a canyon in my yard. There's a hole big enough to swallow a minivan back there. She blinked slowly, as if I were overreacting. Well, technically, it's community land now. You missed a memo. I was starting to see red. What memo? She slid a piece of paper across the desk like it was a magic trick. On it, in Comic Sans, was the most ridiculous thing I've ever read in my life. Section 6B, paragraph 12. Any land that doesn't meet the aesthetic standards of the neighborhood may be reclaimed by the HOA for community beautification purposes. Beautification? The only thing they beautified was my patience because it was gone. I looked her dead in the eye. I didn't vote for this. She gave a dainty shrug. Well, not everyone shows up to the meetings. We had a full quorum. I leaned in. Who voted? She pulled out a clipboard. Let's see. Me, of course. Then my cousin Steve. He just moved into my guest house. Brenda, my yoga instructor. Jerry, the guy who mows my lawn. And Miss Picklebaum voted via text. Miss Picklebaum has been in a coma since last summer. She's very committed, Deborah replied without blinking. I swear I could hear my blood boiling like a microwave burrito. Then she said it, the line that broke my brain. Well, Mr. Thompson, if you won't repaint your house or fix your lawn, maybe you should consider moving in with a hole. Excuse me? That was it. Game over. They didn't just dig a hole in my yard. They told me I belonged in it, like some kind of landscaping goblin, like my neon green mailbox had personally insulted their ancestors. Frank the gnome was still in my hand, missing an arm, looking like he'd seen 3 world wars. I held him up and whispered, You hearing this, Frank? This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a power play. The HOA, a.k.a. the Hateful Order of Aesthetics, was trying to make an example out of me. And why? Because I dared to be different. Because I dared to say, Hey, you know what might spice up this beige nightmare of a neighborhood? A lime green mailbox and a flamingo wearing sunglasses. I looked Deborah in the eye and smiled. Not a happy smile. No, this was the smile of a man who's about to become deeply unhinged in legal ways. That hole in my yard? I said calmly. You're going to wish it was big enough to bury this entire HOA when I'm done with you. She chuckled, like she didn't believe me. Oh, but she would. Because if they wanted war, I was going to give them the kind of HOA showdown that would make the History Channel You Don't Mess With a Man's Land. Especially not a man who spends 6 straight months binge-watching courtroom dramas and once paused Better Call Saul to take notes. I may not have passed a bar exam, but I sure knew how to bring the drama. I stormed back into my house, still muddy, still holding Frank the gnome like a battle trophy, and slammed down a stack of dusty law books I hadn't touched since the Great Lawn Flamingo dispute of 2014. It was time. Time to call in Uncle Ray. Now let me tell you something about Uncle Ray. He's a retired attorney with the calm intensity of a man who once sued a raccoon sanctuary and won. And ever since his HOA fined him $500 for putting up Halloween decorations in August, including a motion-activated skeleton that yelled, Get off my lawn, he's had it out for them. I called him up. Ray, it's go time. He didn't even ask why. Just replied, Which state? And how many HOA members are we taking down? That's family. Together, we launched Operation Go for Revenge. First order of business, property records. We headed to the county clerk's office, which smelled like sadness and dry ink, and pulled every document related to my property and the HOA's authority. And guess what? The vote they claimed they took? Forged signatures. Deborah had signed for people who don't even live there anymore, including one guy who moved to Arizona in 2012 and one lady who's been dead since 2019. Then we checked the construction permits. Nada, nothing. Not even a form scribbled on a napkin. The giant pit in my yard had been built with 0 legal paperwork. Oh, but it gets better. Those construction workers? We did a little background check. They were hired off Craigslist. One guy had experience with shovels listed under special skills. Another one used to be a birthday clown. I mean, I respect the hustle, but you don't build a canyon in someone's backyard using guys who learned excavation from YouTube shorts. Armed with this info, I went full tech mode. I installed 3 security cameras aimed at the pit from different angles. Then I hired a local drone operator, a teenager named Kyle, who looked like he hadn't blinked since 2017. He was thrilled to fly his drone over the site. Oh, you're going to dig a pit for me? I mumbled, watching the drone footage in cinematic slow-mo. Let me dig a deeper one for you. But I wasn't done yet, because what good is justice without spectacle? So I rented a giant inflatable duck. You know, the kind you see in lakes at summer camps. Bright yellow, 8 feet wide, sunglasses on, smug smile. I named him Judge Quackers. I filled the pit with water using a hose, dumped in a few bubble bath bombs for dramatic effect, and placed Judge Quackers right in the center. Then I called the local news. When the reporter arrived, I stood on the edge of the pit, arms crossed, Frank the gnome in one hand, and said, "This is what happens when power goes unchecked. They tried to bury my backyard. Now they're about to bury themselves in lawsuits." Behind me, the drone buzzed through the air, capturing footage of Judge Quackers bobbing majestically like the noble aquatic creature he was. The news aired the segment that night with the headline, "Neighborhood Hoe Digs Hole Gets in Deeper Trouble Than Expected." The story exploded online. Memes flooded the internet. Frank the Gnome became a Twitter icon. Judge Quackers was trending. And Deborah? She was about to regret every minute of her pastel blazer-wearing, rule-breaking career. The night the news story aired, I sat on my porch, still muddy, still fired up, with a bowl of popcorn in one hand and Frank the Gnome in the other. The headline? "Man Trapped in Backyard by HOA's Giant Hole of Doom." Iconic. The video showed me standing proudly on the edge of the pit like a dramatic superhero, with Judge Quackers the inflatable duck bobbing behind me like a loyal sidekick. The camera zoomed in on my homemade protest sign that read, "I'm not leaving unless it's to sue you." The internet exploded. Within hours, I was trending on Twitter. TikTok teens were doing HOA pit challenges in their backyards. Someone even turned Frank into a meme holding a tiny lawyer briefcase with the caption, "Objection, Your Honor. That's my tomato patch." But one group wasn't laughing. The HOA. The very next morning, the county sheriff arrived, complete with aviator shades, a clipboard, and the expression of a man who'd already seen too many HOA complaints in his life. He slapped a big red stop work order sign right on the construction crane, which was still somehow in my yard like it belonged there. Deborah, wearing her usual pastel blazer and fake surprise expression, came rushing out with a smoothie in hand. "This is outrageous. We're beautifying the neighborhood." But the sheriff just pointed at the crater in my yard and replied, "Lady, it looks like you're trying to dig to China." And then came the lawsuits. One by one, the charges stacked up. Forgery, thanks to Uncle Ray's airtight proof that half the voted members didn't even live there or breathe air anymore. Trespassing. The HOA had no legal right to step foot on my property. Property destruction. I had photos, videos, drone footage, and emotional damage. Illegal construction. No permits, no inspections, just a whole lot of dirt. In fact, the judge nearly choked on his coffee when he saw the Craigslist job listing they used to hire the workers. It read, "Wanted pit diggers. No experience necessary. Must like dirt." The court date came faster than expected. I showed up in a suit 2 sizes too big, borrowed from Uncle Ray's courtroom swagger collection with Frank the Gnome tucked gently in my backpack for emotional support. Deborah walked in like she was hosting a bake sale. She even brought gluten-free muffins for the jury. Spoiler, no one ate them. Then Uncle Ray stood up and played the drone footage on the big screen. There she was, clear as day, holding a clipboard, standing over my garden, shouting, "Dig right through the gnome." Gas filled the courtroom. A woman clutched her pearls. Even the bailiff raised his eyebrows. Deborah panicked. "That's not what I meant. It was taken out of context. I love gnomes." Too late. I leaned over to Frank and whispered, "Justice is coming, buddy." The judge, who looked like he hadn't cracked a smile in 20 years, chuckled and said, "Well, that's a first. HOA gnome warfare." And when the verdict came, guilty. On all counts, the judge ruled that the HOA had abused their authority, forged documents, destroyed private property, and caused significant emotional distress. Yes, I may have thrown in a tearful story about how I couldn't sleep at night without fearing another pit attack. I also said Frank had PTSD. He does. 3 board members were arrested on the spot. One tried to run. He didn't make it past the vending machine. And Deborah? The judge sentenced her to 6 months of community service. But not just any community service. She was ordered to beautify my yard. Yep. For the next half a year, Deborah, Queen of Beige, Destroyer of Gardens, was assigned to mow my grass, water my flowers, and scrub the mud off my lawn flamingos. and every day I made sure Frank sat proudly on the porch watching. The pit? Oh, I kept it. You'd think I was going to fill in a hole that caused global Gern-Newton sympathy, a courtroom showdown, and a countywide HOA meltdown. Absolutely not. That pit was now sacred ground. Thanks for the viral media attention, the emotional damage settlement, and an anonymous donation from someone calling themselves the Mailbox Avenger, I had the funds to turn my personal war zone into a community paradise. We drained the pit, lined it with smooth river stones, planted cattails, added koi fish, floating LED lights, and of course the piece de resistance, Judge Quackers the inflatable duck now permanently tethered to a tiny island in the center. And that wasn't all. We added picnic tables, a custom barbecue grill station, and a little stage where local kids now perform backyard plays like Gnome Alone 2 and Deborah's Downfall, the musical. We call it Direct Hit Revenge Pond. Yes, it's literally on Google Maps. Check the reviews, 4.9 stars. Someone wrote, best HOA-related water feature in the country. Tourists stop by. Kids come to feed the ducks. Teens film TikToks with Frank the Gnome, who now sits on a custom-built stone throne, wearing a golden plastic crown and sunglasses. He's a local hero. A legend. There's even a sandwich named after him at the corner deli, the Frankfurter Supreme. As for the HOA, disbanded, legally dissolved. Its bylaws burned in a ceremonious bonfire held during the first annual Pit Fest we hosted in my backyard. There were fireworks, a Frank-shaped cake, and a dunk tank featuring the guy who once tried to ticket me for having overly whimsical garden decor. And the new HOA. Oh, that's right. We didn't get rid of the concept. We upgraded it. It's now called the Neighborhood Council of Creative Chaos, and guess who's running it? Crown me. That's right. Mr. 2 Neon for the HOA is now president for life of the most colorful, gnome-friendly mailbox celebrating community council in the Tri-County area. My first official rule? No more mailbox restrictions. In fact, every house on the block now has to decorate their mailbox in the most wildly creative way they can think of. We even hold a monthly competition. We've got a disco ball mailbox that lights up at night, a T-Rex holding a letter in his mouth. One guy built a working R2-D2 that beeps when the mail comes. And of course, mine remains a glowing lime green beacon of freedom. Even the city council showed up one day and said, "This is chaos." I handed them a lemonade, pointed at the ducks, and replied, "This is justice." Sometimes I sit in my lawn chair, barbecue sizzling, kids laughing, and just watch the peaceful ripples in Revenge Pond as Judge Quackers floats majestically toward the sunset. It's poetic. And Deborah? Oh, she still stops by sometimes, now as a volunteer, planting flowers around the pond she once tried to turn into my metaphorical grave. I give her a friendly wave, and she waves back, with a trowel and a haunted expression. And now, dear viewer, let me leave you with this. If someone ever tries to dig a hole for you, tell them you're busy building a kingdom in it. Because sometimes the best way to fight a hole is to throw the whole O in it and then charge admission. Call to action, YouTube style. If you love this crazy truish story, smash that like button, subscribe for more HOA disasters, and drop a comment below. What color would you paint your mailbox to absolutely enrage the neighborhood? And don't forget to visit Revenge Pond next time you're in town. Tell them Frank sent you.